Thanks for stopping by at Twisted Art Designs. This is the next in a series for the Paper Dolls Altered book. I don't remember what number it is, but you'll see on the title. Today what we're going to do is a project for creating a Victorian tassel doll, a tassel paper doll, and a garden background. And I would like to acknowledge a few other channels on Instagram, or I'm sorry, on YouTube, where I got the idea for this tassel doll. Hope you can see that. Bianca4430 and My Cottage Crafts both have some beautiful tassel dolls. So check out their channels too, because that's where this inspiration come. I kind of added to it and put it into an altered book, so I've gone a step further with it and put my little twist on it. But that is where my inspiration came from, so I want to give credit where credit is due. So hopefully you will enjoy making this beautiful layered Victorian girl. I love her feathers, it's so cute. And the garden background. So thanks for stopping by, and let's get started and play and see what you can come up with for your Paper Dolls Altered book. So the first thing you're going to need to do is find your strings in your book and remove some pages, because you don't want to end up with your book to be too thick or at the top when your book is finished it to be off and kind of wobbly. See how there's so many pages here that every time I do a layout I go and I remove a few pages where the strings are. So go ahead and do that, and then find your spot where you're going to do this layout. And what you're going to need, normally when we make our pages, we do sets where we Mod Podge two pieces together. I call that a set, and then another set. For this idea, we're going to need 3 pages. So you need 2 that are a set and 1 behind it. And on this side, same thing. 2 that are going to be Mod Podged together and 1 behind it. So that's what you'll need. And what you want to start with is Mod Podge those 2 pages and 2 pages together. The 2 sets in the middle. Mod Podge those together and let them dry. Leave this page alone, and then we'll start to create our background. And don't forget to save your pages. If it's book text, you can tear it and use it to put down on your page. In this particular book that I'm removing it from, I don't know if you can see that. It's not zooming in very well. But it's lined paper, so I'm keeping that because this will be perfect paper to trim out and to distress and use it in one of my handmade journals as a place to write on and journal on. So always keep your pages that you remove. Okay, and in case you're new to altered books, to doing altered books, if this is one of your first videos, this is number, I don't know, I think 9 or 10 in a series, but if this is where you're starting at, I just want to quickly show that what you want to do to put sets of pages together is just put some Mod Podge down, put an even coat with your brush, and then put the pages together. And I do that by just closing it up. Make sure your Mod Podge is a nice even layer. And then close that book up so that the pages don't get any wrinkles in it, and then just work it out to the edge. And those pages, when they dry, will be nice and thick and together. So that's how you put the set together. For this background, I am going to lay down some papers as a background. So I'm using a combination of things. Some book text, some torn out crossword puzzles. I've got some book text here that's in French that I got as Happy Mail. I've got some that has came from a book, and it's got oriental writing on it. So I'm going to use those things as my background. And same as how you put your pages together, you just want to tear your pieces and use your Mod Podge to put them down, Mod Podge them down until the entire spread is covered, and then let it dry. So go ahead and add your back layers, and you know, you just kind of tear things and put them down in a nice random way. Here's a cute crossword puzzle that would be cute on there. So I'm going to just put them in a random way. I might even do that this way so it's not straight up and down readable. Anyway, just do it. You can use scrapbook papers, you can use book text or whatever you want to cover your background. That's your first step for this background. Okay, here are my pages covered with different things as my first layer on my altar book pages. I like this image, so I kind of put that in off to the side. And now I'm just going to let it dry. And I do use a file folder when I'm doing this, and I put it underneath so that when I Mod Podge over the edge, you're not going over the edge of pages you've already done that'll end up getting stuck together. And then even if this gets stuck, you can still pull it out easily. So now I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, and then I'll move on to the next step. Okay, if you decide that you want to do this on material, what you want to do is you want to get a box of Reynolds freezer paper. And freezer paper is plain on one side and shiny on the other side. So if you cut a sheet of it 8.5 by 11 and you get some plain cotton muslin material, which you can even get it at your local craft store, but even Walmart has it by the yard in a little folded piece hanging. So you can just go in and buy a package of a yard of muslin, and it's only like $3 or $4. And what you want to do is put the shiny side down and then use your iron and iron it on. You want to cut that into 8.5 by 11 first, and then you iron it onto your material, and then you trim it out to 8.5 by 11 size. Now what you have is a sheet that you can put into your printer, and it can be an inkjet or a laser printer, doesn't matter which. And what you want to do is test out your printer to see which way to load it. For me, what I did was took a plain sheet of printer paper and I put an X on it and wrote the word front, and I loaded it this way and typed something out in my word processor just to see, you know, where would that end up printing? Does it print on the front or on the back? It ended up printing on the front. So for me, I know that when I want to load something in, I want to load it in with the material on the front, the paper on the back, so that the printing will get printed onto the material, not onto the back of the freezer paper. Hope that makes sense. So just find out which way your printer loads. Then you go to your computer and you download your image. If you go on YouTube, I mean not YouTube, if you go on your computer and you Google Victorian women images, there are some that are copyrighted that you can't use. That's especially if you're going to sell the item that you're making. But then there are some that are Victorian images that are free. So you want to find a woman, and then you want to print her out onto either cardstock. You can use cardstock if you don't want to do the material. Then go ahead and use cardstock, print it onto cardstock, or print it onto your materials. So go ahead and print your Victorian lady that you choose for this project. Okay, here are the images that I chose, and one of them, the one that's going to be my Tassel doll, I put her on material. That's just my choice. I wanted her to be material. I like the look and the feel of it. And you want to make it about, well, it depends on how big your altered book is, but this is the size of my book page. Let me zoom out a little bit. And she's going to be about right here in the book, and then this gives lots of room down here for her tassel dress at the bottom. So I made her about 4 or 5 inches tall. And then this image, I like this image of the women sitting in the garden. They go together, and I printed this one on cardstock because this one is just going to go into my background. So those are my 2 images, and you want to get your one doll, and you want her to be your one Victorian image, you want her to be to her hips. There's a lot of images when you Google this. There's a ton of images to choose from where the picture stops at the hips. Not at the waist. You want to go a little bit longer and go to the ones that stop at the hips. So find yourself a Victorian girl that stops at the hip and print her either on cardstock or on material, and then we'll move on. Okay, so when this is dry and ready to go, you have a choice of either tearing this edge like this, these pieces that overlap. You can tear them to make them rough looking, which I think I might do. I was going to cut them, but I think I'm going to go rough. And it's your book. I'm just showing you some ideas. This is how I'm doing it. You can do your book any way you want to do it. So you have a choice of either tearing off those images, and it's easier to flip it over and go along that edge and tear, or you can use scissors and trim it out. So go ahead and clean up your edge around your book. So now my edges are torn and the page is ready to go. What I'm going to use is some varnish and some acrylic paint, and I'm going to do it in 2 colors of blue because I'm going to make this kind of into a garden scene. And so I'm kind of just making it sort of, in my mind, represent somewhat sky. And varnish, if you use varnish and acrylic paint, you'll get kind of just a nice clear translucent background where you can kind of see some of this. I want to see some of my paper in the back. That's just me. I like that. So I'm just putting 2 colors of blue down, not a lot of the darker one because I want it to be more light than dark. And then I'm just going to start spreading out that paint. And it mixes with the varnish. The varnish kind of thins it out. Again, I'm going to put my file folder underneath so I don't get the pages underneath it. I want some of that background to show. And in fact, there's a few places where it's covering it up too much for me, so I'm going to take a baby wipe and remove some of the paint. And I don't know about you guys, but I just hate the smell of varnish. I have not found any varnish that I can tolerate. It just, to me, smells like, I don't know what. I just don't like it. Anyway, there's my paint. There's my layer of paint. And I like how I can see my background behind it. I wanted to see some of that, so I'm going to remove some right there. I'm out of wipes, so I'm going to just do it with a Kleenex. I loved that image that came out of that 1800s magazine, so I kind of want it to show. I like that. Actually, I like that so much, I'm going to do that in a couple of places, just wiping it off just a little bit. You know, this is just, it's play. You just play until you get it the way you want it to look. Dabbing it around. The dabbing looks good, and I'm going to go over this with a lot of more layers. So, but I like that background. I like to be able to see, so I'm really happy with that, and I'm going to let it dry. Okay, and for my next layer, I've put this doily over my page, and I've kind of covered that area that I wanted to save, and I'm using some Delusions ink spray. I'm using a London Blue, and I'm just gonna spray over this doily with my spray, and then I'm gonna leave it just like that and let it dry. Okay, I like my mandala looking background from my doily, and it's kind of subtle. It didn't come out quite as defined as I'd like, but it's still really pretty. Now what I'm going to do is take a bunch of napkins with floral images on them because I want to make this into a garden. So I'm going to just take my napkins and I do have on another video about this too, which you've probably seen. Easiest way to separate your napkins is to use tape, Scotch tape on either side. So you take a little piece of Scotch tape and you put it on one piece on either side. Actually, I don't even need two pieces. And it just helps you peel that top layer off. Sometimes they're double layers, sometimes they're triple layer, but all you want is that top layer. And your little piece of tape really helps that. Makes it easier than trying to separate it out. And then if you take a wet brush, either a water brush or just a paintbrush and water, if you have a specific image that you want, you just go around that image with the water. Like I'm just kind of singling out that little rose. You just go around it, and then it helps it make it really easy to tear it out. Otherwise, trying to tear a napkin, they never tear correctly, and so it sometimes tears the image that you want. So if you wet it, it comes right apart. So now you've got this image to start to Mod Podge down. I love Mod Podging with napkins on a background. It just looks so pretty and it's got a nice texture to it. So you just put your layer of Mod Podge and you put your napkin down. And put some over the top. It's just so pretty. I love the texture of it and the way that your background shows through the napkin. I just love that. I think that's so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all over my page. I'm going to cover it with all kinds of flowers and images to just create a really crazy, wild, garden looking background. Okay, here's my lovely garden background. So I've got all different kinds of napkins layered to make this lovely flowery garden, and now I'm going to just let that completely dry before I go on and do the next step. Okay, my background is dry, so I'm going to put this aside now and we'll start working on our tassel doll. Okay, here's my image that I have printed onto material, and now I'm going to just peel off that freezer paper and you're left with just your piece of material, or you can do it on cardstock if you don't want to do material. I'm going to glue her down to a piece of cardboard. It's white on one side. It's from packaging of some sort, so I'm recycling or upcycling. And I'm going to glue her down so that the white side is on the back and that she is on the front. I'm just going to use Mod Podge, and I'm not going to put the Mod Podge on the front of her because I don't want it to bleed. I'm not sure if it would or not. It was an inkjet printer, but I'm just going to put it onto the back and then lay her down and then let that dry, and then that'll give me a nice clean edge for cutting her shape out. Okay, so here it is, and it's Mod Podged down, and I've really burnished her down well, and now I'm going to just let her dry. And then once this is dry, I'm going to take a good sharp pair of scissors and cut all along her outside edge right down to the edge of her skirt here and cut her out, leaving her on the cardboard. The next thing you want to do is gather some laces and trims and appliques and beads and anything you want to use to embellish. And you definitely want to find some fringe. This is some fringe that actually is upcycled off of something else. And I had it in my craft drawer, so it'll be perfect. And you want to put the fringe on, glue it to the back, and you want to glue it along that bottom edge like that. And you can use any kind of glue. You can use hot glue, 3-in-1. I'm probably going to use my art glitter glue. And then you want to just start layering things. You want to layer lace and appliques, and you just want to just start layering and adding things, and then as you go along, you just keep adding on top of each other, and then we're going to put some long ribbons and some strings of beads also from the bottom, from the back side. So first thing you want to do is put on that long strand of tassels. Start So get out your bling and your laces and ribbons and doodads and whatnots and layer her up and decorate her and make her all fancy and pretty. And then I will show you what I've come up with and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, here is my girl. I put a doily behind her head and some feathers behind her. I put some liquid pearls to put a pearl earring and a pearl necklace. I put some lace trim on the sides. I layered some appliques. I've got my fringe. I made some more fringe out of fibers and some sheer ribbons. And so there she is. There's my fancy girl. And what I want to do next is for putting her in this book, the idea that I had was to, let's see, I think I'm going to put her right about here, and I'm going to let these just hang off the end of the book. I love that, so that's what I want to do. And what I'm going to do is put a cutting mat underneath this set of pages, and then I'm going to cut some slits through here, and it'll mark where the slits will be through there. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm putting my cutting mat underneath my set of 2 pages that are glued together. And right here at the side of her waist, I'm going to turn this so that I can keep it on camera and do it. I'm going to make a cut through the cardboard, right at the side of her waist, and into the page underneath. So I've got to push kind of hard because I want it to go through. And then one on the other side of her waist. Okay, let's see if it went through. Yes, it did. Woohoo! Okay, so I'm moving her aside. And now I'm going to move that to the other side, turn it over so that I can cut it a little bit better, a little more through. And I can see where those slits are. Okay, so I've got my 2 cuts, and they go through. And now I'm going to show you my idea. Okay, I've got a piece of thin sheer ribbon, and I'm going to go through the back side here, and I'm going to feed that ribbon through to the front side. And pull it through. And then the same with the other end and the other slit. I'm going to feed that ribbon through the slot into the front. I need something to help it through, apparently. I don't want to cut my slits too big. There we go. I just needed something to push it through. Okay, so there is on the back side, and on the front side I've got my ribbon, and I'm going to even it up by just pulling it until it matches. So we've evened it up here. And now what I'm going to do is take my Mod Podge, and I'm going to Mod Podge this whole page and attach it down to this 3rd page here. So I'm going to glue this whole thing down. It's going to make this ribbon a permanent fixture on your page. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. Okay, so my pages are now stuck down, and now my ribbons are a permanent fixture of my book, which I love. And that 3rd page, I saved that so that that could be attached to the page next to it. That's why I had you do the 2 sets and keep 1 page out, because I glued to that page to make this tie. And then now what I'm going to do is feed that ribbon up through the holes in the side of my girl and tie her in right here. And I'll be right back after I do that. Okay, I've pushed my ribbons through to the front, and now I'm going to tie my sheer ribbon with a bow around her waist, and it's tying her down to the page. You can remove her if you want. If you wanted to take it out, hang it, use it somewhere, or keep her in the book, then she's tied in, but it's just a kind of fun three-dimensional interactive look because she's connected and attached to our altered book page. So there's her bow around her waist, and she's tied in. On this side, I've cut out and fussy cut and glued down my other Victorian girls, so they're in the garden as well. And then these dangles hanging down, all this fringe is just going to hang outside my book. I love it. It's just cute and fun. Victorian tassel girl in the garden. So I hope you enjoyed doing this project. I hope you had fun decorating a girl, printing one off the internet and doing a fun garden background and adding it into our altered book, our Paper Dolls altered book. So thanks for stopping by, and remember that art soothes the heart. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook. There's information in the description in the little arrow below. So check out information about complex regional pain syndrome and ways that you can contact me. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Hopefully you're still enjoying working on our Paper Dolls book. Go make something fun and soothe your heart today. Thanks for stopping by.